Thank you. My challenge is to tell you in 10 minutes how you write a backend for GHC and how easy it is. In fact, it is really easy. I have done it based on the PowerPC's 32-bit backend. I have extended it to a 64-bit backend. And when I wrote this and when I did this, I actually I did this incrementally. I always waited for a panic to happen and then said, well, okay, git grab the panic, and then I knew which instruction I had to do next. And then I went off teaching 2 lectures, and after that, my pretty old Power Mac was done compiling to the next panic. And this is what I did, and eventually I didn't get any more panics. And what happened then, I got a segmentation fault, and I was really frustrated. Actually, the segmentation fault happened 2 layers into the C library, and I knew the C library wasn't wrong. I mean, I couldn't have, at least not at that point. And fortunately, going back in my backtrace, I saw, I ended up in Haskell code, and I saw my code using register 13. And this is forbidden in the 64-bit PowerPC, and it was fine in the 32-bit version. And I fixed that, and then the compiler ran, and the test suite gave me back, I think, 160 failed tests. And most of them were GHCI not working because I had not implemented the runtime linker. And that was pretty good, and there's still like 4 or 5 bugs left, but they are not inside the native code generator. They are somewhere else where some assumptions inside the code generator violate PowerPC, or at least PowerPCs. Actually, yeah, PowerPC. All right, well, let's get started. A short outline of my talk. Well, I guess I don't need to spend much time on this. I mean, this is basically just where does it fit in. I'm basically here at the second to last step where I'm generating some assembly code and hand this off then eventually to the assembler, which generates object code that I then can run. So what I need to do is represent the assembly for PowerPC in some data types, and representing sections inside the assembly, section for data and section for text and all that stuff. That is fairly straightforward, and it works nicely because it's all more or less geared towards GNU assembler or other assemblers that are very similar. So what is really to be done is you define the instruction set for your microprocessor. PowerPC comes with a 1,200 pages manual for this. Of course, you don't want to read that. You don't want to go and implement all instructions that are described in, I think it's maybe 5 or 6 pages of listing all those instructions. A lot of them don't apply because they are for system code. We only want those that IBM nicely calls for the problem state, which is basically user land, because we users create the problems. So what you do for each instruction, you just give it a name, like it's data instruct or instruction. And for add, I just gave the example of add, and then add has a few arguments to it, and PowerPC being a RISC architecture, they use 3 address mode for all those operations. And it looks a bit weird that I have an RI as the last element, and that is actually, it could be a register or an immediate value. You could have created 2 constructors for that too, and I don't know what is actually better. This was already there, so I just stuck with it. Those registers here, they are not the real registers of the PowerPC. They are just an infinite supply of registers, and then I hand all this off to some infrastructure that's already there, a register allocator, and actually there's a choice of 2. And you didn't have to think about that at all. You just handed it off and it worked. As I said, you only include instructions as needed. And then, of course, we want to generate assembly code in the end. So we write a pretty printer for each instruction that looks a little bit like that. you just say, well, add is the, I ignored the fact that it was an immediate here. I just wrote it for the register. So you emit add, and then pretty print the register, a comma, pretty print the other register, and then pretty print the end. So that is all you need to do. And then the next step up from that is in CMM, we get machine operations. So you take all these machine operations and look at them. If you find an equivalent instruction in your machine code. If not, then it's some kind of trade-off. Do I generate a short sequence? If it's short, like 4, 5, 6 instructions, then I will do that. And otherwise, I'll call an external function. I just showed it here for the add operation again. So I will get something like CMM macop, MOP will be the add operation, and I get 2 parameters. I get a list. I have to pattern match it like this because I don't have this type information that this is a dyadic operation here in CMM, but in my assembly code I have it. And then what do? I just generate the code for it, and it's trivial code because it's easy. What do I need to do? First, I compute X into some register, and I compute Y into some register. So this generates the code for getting X and Y. They could be arbitrary CMM expressions. And once I have that, I can concatenate all that stuff together, generate the code for 1, for 2, and then the instruction that puts those 2 things together. And since I generated Y into a register, I need to say that it's in a register. And I return that, I give the hint to the register allocator. You can put it into any register, and it has this format, the size of the program, and this code. So this is how I translate machine operations. And then I need to compose those machine operations into basic blocks. And I mean, this language is almost as simple as core, but it's imperative. So I have loading a value into a register, storing it into memory. I have an unconditional branch to a local label. I have conditional branches with 2 targets, true and false. And I have a jump table that is basically a table that goes from, I think, from 0 to n. And sparse tables are somehow optimized at the CMM level already. Sometimes I was not so happy with the size of those jump tables, but I don't know, maybe you have to tweak something in CMM code generation. And well, the toughest part is implementing, well, the second toughest part is implementing CMM call, because you somehow, well, you have to make sure that the system linker, if you're doing dynamic libraries, the system linker doesn't mess with your code. And there's some edge in the PowerPC backend, at least for PowerPC 64-bit, that I haven't ironed out yet. So it's a little bit inefficient what I'm generating there. I have a patch for making it, okay, for making it more efficient. And then the comment in the file says this is the worst, CMM unsave foreign call, because there you have to implement the parameter passing convention of your C ABI. And this is very, very complex. It comes in documents of like 60 pages or something like that. But basically, you read like the three to four interesting pages and implement that in Haskell. And it's very nice. It's very nice code. But unfortunately, we have like 4 different ABIs in there, and so it looks a bit unwieldy. All right, I promised a little bit about peephole optimization, and I have less than a minute. Yeah, well, what can we do? Peephole optimization is basically you have a list of instructions, and you convert it into a list of instructions, and I'm done. So you pattern match your instructions here, and change it into this instruction here. And that concludes my talk. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Peter. Time for one question, if anyone has a question. No questions. One question.
There's one.
Hi. What was the big value from doing this over using the LLVM PAPI 664 backend?
There is no LLVM calling convention, like Haskell calling convention, implemented in the LLVM backend, and actually the LLVM infrastructure makes it kind of painful to implement new, well, more painful than implementing it for Intel, because it has those function descriptors, and due to that, IBM decided, or well, IBM implemented all the infrastructure not using this table generation, whatever file, but they implemented in C++ code. And that was my reason to, well, actually, and I wanted to write a native code backend. That was the other reason. Not very scientific, but yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.